A few days after completing all the formalities, I packed my luggage and left my in-laws' house. I informed my mother-in-law about my departure, bowing respectfully as a sign of maturity. However, she criticized me, saying I had been a terrible wife and mother from the start. She even called me the worst mother for leaving my children. To make it worse, my son and daughter laughed at her harsh words. My name is Maria, a 42-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Ken, our son Josh, and our daughter Amy. We had a peaceful life, our children were growing up well, and Ken worked hard to support us. But everything changed recently. My father-in-law passed away due to illness, and my mother-in-law moved into our house. Ken, being her only son, felt responsible for her. Without consulting us, he decided to bring her to live with us. I was upset but had to accept it when he argued, "Are you asking me to abandon my mother when she has nowhere to go?" From that point on, life became unbearable. My mother-in-law had always disliked me and criticized everything I did. For instance, she once commented on my cooking, "Maria, what's this seasoning? It's terrible, I'm sorry." "I'll do better next time," I replied. She also complained about the food. "I don't like greasy food, but the kids and Ken enjoy fried dishes," I explained. "Then make a separate meal for me," she snapped. "Or do you want me to die early from eating unhealthy food?" I tried to reason with her, saying it would be costly and time-consuming to make separate meals, but she dismissed me. "Ken earns enough money. You just need to manage the finances better. You're so spoiled. When I was your age, I managed everything on my own. It's sad that my grandchildren have to grow up with such a lazy mother." Her constant remarks hurt me, but I kept quiet. Anytime I tried to defend myself, Ken would scold me harshly. When I first moved in with my mother-in-law, she was so difficult to deal with that I couldn't hold back anymore. I told her, "If you're so opinionated, why don't you do it yourself?" She went straight to my husband, and when he found out, he got very angry. He yelled at me, saying, "How dare you talk to her like that when I'm the one supporting you?" I thought about getting a divorce, but I realized that as a housewife, I wouldn't be able to take care of my children on my own. They are everything to me, and I didn't want them taken away. So, I decided to quietly accept the situation instead of fighting back. But instead of just accepting everything, I started making plans for my future. I applied for jobs at different companies, even though my mother-in-law watched me closely since she was at home all day. I finally got a part-time job at a bank, thanks to my previous experience as a bank clerk. It was my first corporate job in a long time and I enjoyed it. Even though it came with responsibility and stress, it was much more peaceful than dealing with my mother-in-law all day. However, my mother-in-law wasn't happy that I was working. She said, "Why work when Ken earns enough money? Maybe you're out looking for men." I couldn't believe she thought that. Although Ken made a good salary, our expenses had increased since his mother moved in, so we couldn't afford everything. My mother-in-law demanded that I give her an allowance, claiming that if I didn't, I might be spending money on other men. I refused, saying it wasn't possible. She went straight to Ken again, and when he came home, he yelled at me, just like before. "Are you having an affair?" he shouted. "No, I'm not," I replied. "But that's what my mother said. She thinks you're using your part-time salary to pay for men." "I'm not doing that," I protested. "Then prove you're innocent. Give her an allowance," he demanded. "No," I said firmly. At that moment, my mother-in-law entered the room with a smug look on her face and said, $500 a month. That's how much you'll give me." In the end, I gave in to the pressure from both my husband and mother-in-law. I had to give most of the money I earned from my part-time job to my mother-in-law as an allowance. To make things even worse, my mother-in-law told the kids, "Your mother is a horrible adulterer," smirking as she said it. Even though my children were only in junior high, they understood what that meant. It was a terrible lie, and it hurt me deeply. I felt it was completely unfair, and it felt like it was destroying me. Then things got even worse. I found out that my husband was the one having an affair, despite accusing me of being unfaithful. This pushed me over the edge. They say that when you hit your limit, you just lose it all. I didn't want to spend another second with these people, so I went straight to get the divorce papers. I don't want to stay in this house after you had an affair, I told my husband. When I confronted him with the divorce papers, he laughed and said, I don't want an old woman like you in my house. I knew he planned to be with his affair partner after the divorce. He agreed to pay alimony and share the property without arguing. When we asked the children where they wanted to live, they both said they wanted to stay in the house. My mother-in-law smirked and said, I knew you liked your father more than this woman. A few days later, after everything was settled, I packed my things and left my in-laws' house. I told my mother-in-law I was leaving that day, and I bowed to her as a sign of maturity. My mother-in-law grinned at me again and said sarcastically, You've been a terrible wife and mother from the start. She added, It's awful that you're leaving your children. I couldn't believe how much she was mocking me. My daughter and son even laughed when they heard her. Look, even the kids are laughing at you. What a pathetic mother, she said. Well, actually, it was the children who decided to stay with their father, not me, so I wasn't abandoning them. Oh, I see, she said, smirking, You're just a sad woman abandoned by her children. I didn't care what she said anymore. I replied, You can say whatever you want, but don't forget that you're now responsible for everything at home. Don't worry about that, I told her confidently. Unlike you, I'm good at everything. She seemed to accept that and said, Well, I must be going now. With that, I left my in-laws' house for good. I went back to my parents' house and focused on my work. I asked my job to switch me to full-time, and I took the test to become a full-time employee. Fortunately, I passed and got the position. Now, I could take care of my kids, and I knew my mother-in-law must be exhausted by now. Sure enough, about 3 months later, she contacted me. Hey Maria, help me out, she asked. What's wrong? I replied. I need to pick up Josh from his soccer games, help with his training camp during the summer, and make his lunch every morning for practice. Plus, I have to wash his dirty uniforms every day. My mother-in-law continued. My granddaughter Amy also goes to school every day, so I have to drive her back and forth. On top of that, I have to do all the housework by myself. Ken says he's tired from work and doesn't help at all. I replied, Well, if you're just complaining, I'm hanging up now. Wait, she said, I'm calling because I need your help, Maria. Excuse me, but I'm already divorced, so it's not my problem anymore, I told her. Please don't say that. I won't come back, I said firmly, but I understand you can't handle everything on your own. I can't trust you with my precious children, I added. I'm taking them with me. What? She replied. They want to stay here, I explained, but they just wanted you to understand how hard I've been working. I told her, when I decided to get a divorce, the first thing I did was talk to the kids. They said they would follow me immediately. My daughter Amy said, But does this mean that grandmother and the others are just kicking you out, Mom? And my son said, I don't like that. We know how hard you work, Mom. The children told me they would stay with my mother-in-law first, to make her realize what I had gone through. I was so happy that my kids were on my side. I made up my mind to make enough money so I could bring them back home. And now, everything was going according to plan. I had a full-time job, and I was ready to bring the kids with me. I hired a lawyer and demanded custody of the children. Since they wanted to live with me, custody was easily granted. When I reported my ex-husband's affair to his company, his boss was shocked. As a result, my ex-husband was transferred to a department where he couldn't advance in his career. This made it impossible for him to continue paying the mortgage on the house. My mother-in-law was also ordered to find work. She was furious that her son was telling her what to do. Now, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law are blaming each other for everything. They'll probably have to leave the house soon, but that's not my problem anymore. In the meantime, I rented an apartment and moved in with my children. They are growing up to be wonderful kids. My daughter helps with cooking, and my son assists with laundry and cleaning. I want to support them so they can do whatever they want in the future. That's why I will keep working hard and earning money. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you like. See you in the next video.